Hey yogis, I've gotten some great questions from the email I sent a couple weeks ago saying, hey, what do you want to know? I'll answer your questions. So I've gotten a number of them. So I think every few weeks I'll do a new video, and depending on how lengthy the question is, answer one or two. So I'm going to tackle two today. So the first one is, my question is, you have referred to certain types of poses and flow pace as being best for each season. Can you give us a general overview of that so then we can intentionally incorporate that into our home practices? Really, really, really good question. So this is bringing in Ayurveda to how we practice yoga. I'm going to do actually a workshop series within my membership, I think in the month of April, and I'll delve into this even more. But essentially, the three doshas, which are the constitutional types that relate to our physical being, also govern everything else. So there's Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Now, just as our body type is a combination of these three doshas, so is the time of day, so is the time of year, so is the time of life. So when it comes to the seasons, fall time is Vata time. So this is when the elements of air and space are dominant in nature. So think about fall and how the weather starts to get cool. It definitely begins to get colder. We have a lot more wind. There's a lot more activity and movement. And then of course, also culturally, this is the time of year for many of us where we really speed up. Summer has ended, vacation has ended, everybody's back on the road. Like the freeways are jam-packed. There's a lot of frenetic energy going on. So when that's the case, so whenever you feel that happening in your environment where you live, it's going to be a little different everywhere. But whenever you feel it start to get cooler and windier and move into, fall time, then that's when you want to be really mindful. It's Vata season and we want to apply opposites. So the opposite of air and space is earth and water. It's really those elements that are heavier and more grounding. So it's not that you can't do, full spectrum practice. You can still do all the poses, but your approach ideally would be a little bit different in the fall. So longer holds, right? Not moving as quickly. So if there's a lot of frenetic energy, we want to balance that with slower, more mindful movements. So slow down your practice, hold longer, emphasize standing poses, because standing poses really ground the lower body and root us, earth and water. Focus on slowing down breath, especially long exhalations to calm and ground the nervous system, and meditation, right? So generally, go slower, hold longer, Vata season, fall time. Okay, as we continue, Vata goes from fall into winter, and then not the case right now, but for us in the Bay Area, but normally there's a lot of rain, and then of course in colder climates there's snow. So as you get through the heart of winter, there's a buildup of water and earth, and we move into Kapha season. So earth and water characterize Kapha time of year. So late winter into spring is when we're in Kapha season. So again, if things are on the heavier side, think we've gone through the holidays, we've eaten a little heavier, we may be a little heavier in our weight. It's certainly the season of cold and flus where there's mucus and congestion. Everything in the system is heavier. So then we want to apply opposites. So in late winter, early spring, we want to get moving. We want things that are stimulating. We want to move more quickly, more sun salutations, more dynamic movements, and especially good time of year to focus on the navel center. A lot of Kapalabhati and things that build fire. So the internal heat, hotter practices help us melt away the accumulation and kind of the stagnation of late winter. Okay, so late winter into spring, stimulating practices. And then we get into summertime and it's pitta season, fire and water, but really think fire. And if you live in a place where it gets hot, you can definitely have an accumulation of heat in the body. So you want to, not intensify things as much. I mean, you can still have a strong practice, but diminish the intensity and spend plenty of time in cool down. I mean, just literally think cooling and, cooling breaths, things that literally cool the system. So that is how you would just a little bit fine tune what you emphasize and how you practice seasonally. Now it's going to vary a little bit, of course, unique to the person. So we have to take into account our constitution because that will play a role. But that's the big overview. So more in subsequent offerings on constitutions, but that's how you would generally adjust your practice. Fall into winter, late winter, spring, summer, 3 doshas. Okay, question number 2. Let me pull it up here. Let's see. Okay, this is another good one, totally different. I'm wondering if it's possible to have a complete yoga practice without being able to do shoulder stands and headstands. I'm challenged with balancing poses as well. I'm working on that, blah, 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 but I just cannot do the shoulder stands and headstands. Are there alternatives or modifications? Yes, absolutely. So, of course, you can totally have a complete practice without headstand and without shoulder stand. Absolutely. They are highly revered poses in the yogic system because once we have the flexibility and the stamina to hold them for lengths of time, not just a quick in and out, but really hold them, they really build our nervous system capacity and really lead to more meditative states that kind of support us moving into the more subtle realms of yoga. Now that being said, they are not for every practitioner. They are not. So for some people, due to structure, due to injury, due to age, due to a number of factors, inversions are not appropriate. For instance, if there's serious neck issues or a flattened cervical curve, the neck doesn't curve in, then bearing weight on the head, not good. Same for shoulder stand. It requires neck flexion. So if there's any issues in flexing the neck and then bearing weight on the shoulders, not good. So in those cases, sometimes it's a temporary thing, sometimes it's a permanent thing, in which case you never practice those poses. The alternatives for headstand, there's a bunch. There's dolphin both ways. There's dolphin push-ups to develop strength. There's a modified headstand where you actually come onto the shoulders on a chair and there's no weight on the neck. You can also do the Prasarita A, the wide stance forward bend where your hands are down and you place a block and you get that feeling of being on your head without actually being upside down. So lots of replacements for headstand. And the same is true for shoulder stand. There's legs up the wall pose, there's bridge on a block, and then even lift the legs while on the block, and you get that same chest opening of shoulder stand without the pressure on the neck. So sometimes, again, it's literally like a permanent situation where you would not ever do those inversions. You would do their replacements or modifications. And sometimes it's a process where we have to get the mobility in the thoracic spine and or the mobility in the shoulders or the strength. And if we, do the building blocks, if we prepare ourselves over time, those postures may eventually be easily achieved. So yes, there's lots of replacements, and no, you do not have to do those poses to have a well-balanced practice. All right, yogis, I hope that's helpful to many of you. There's some other really good questions, and I'm going to tackle them over the next few weeks. Of course, email me anytime or on social media on Instagram, Facebook. Send me a message, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Namaste. Thank you.